And welcome back. Today we're going to draw the actor Zac Efron while he's skateboarding. Notice that the dynamism of this pose has a lot to do with his center of gravity. His center of gravity is not over his weight-bearing feet. It is over here. And that strongly conveys a sense that he is in motion. So we need to be aware of that right from the start. We're going to attempt to make this little drawing look like Zac Efron eventually, but to start with, let's just try fitting him on the page. So I'm going to draw a little placeholder for his head. And I'm going to look for the pit of his neck as a major landmark. And that's about a half a head down and over to the right. We could try using a little bit of the Loomis method here. Let's see if we can make that work. His shoulders really feel like they're at the same level. So remember that triangle idea? We're going to put vertical just above the pit of horizontal just above the pit of his neck. And we're going to ask ourselves, is this centered under the head, this line, or is it not? And I would say this is pretty much centered under the head. So there's a lot of symmetry between the head and the shoulders, but not between the head and the rib cage. Remember, we marked the line of symmetry through the rib cages off to the right. It starts with the sternum. Okay, so we're seeing a little more bend in his knees than in his torso. So if we imagine location of his pubic arch and greater trochanter, that's going to be right here. It's hitting right around his wrist, which is what we usually look for. And if we go down to his feet, and we're going to ask ourselves, is the trochanter centered on the figure or not? And I'm going to measure it. You can measure it on your screens. It's a good habit to get into. And it actually is centered. Even though there's a little bend in his legs, that is not interfering with the centering of the trochanter. And what gets weird about the Loomis method from an angle like this is, remember, his pubic arch would be about here, so that this triangle gets warped. It's like it pulls around like that, and it's turned sideways. So let's try it. Let's go down about 4 heads from the top of the head. 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll notice that I'm working pretty much sight size. I don't know if that's something we've talked about in this class, but sight size means that my drawing is going to be about the same size as the image I see on the screen. So that's a really effective way to get your vertical proportions right. You're welcome to do that in your drawing if that's convenient right now, but it's not required. So here's that twisted triangle. Here's the line of symmetry through the sternum, going down to the line through the center of the abdominals, navel, down to the pubic arch. And then we're going to throw a rib cage in here. It's not staying completely within this triangle because we're seeing the side of the rib cage, and that's going to stick out. I still haven't convinced myself that the Loomis method is that great for everyday figure drawing from different angles. Frankly, I don't use it a whole lot, but I'm trying to relate this to the stuff we've done before. So the rib cage is turned, but it's not at a steep angle. It's pretty vertical. And then we're going to look for the pelvis under the rib cage. This is that combination of forms that Proko calls the bean. I don't think we've watched that video yet, but we'll take a look at that soon. And then we're going to try to connect with the skateboard by, let's mark where our feet go. Remember, these two distances have to be about the same. So the skateboard should be about here. And remember, the knee is about halfway between the trochanter and the bottom of the heel. So this is the leg in front, and the leg in back is doing about the same thing. I'm starting off with kind of stick figure legs, and then I'm going to quickly mass them out a little. And when we do figure drawing, a thing I'm going to be looking for is that's on the craftsmanship part of the rubric is I want you to show me that you know how to use these kind of light searching lines to start the drawing, and then more definite dark contour lines to finish it. So if I come around right now and check your work, I don't want to see any hard, sharp outlines. I want to see very light searching lines with a quality similar to what you see me doing right now. We're going to connect the neck to the rib cage. Remember, these trapezius muscles come up behind the neck. He's got these massive deltoid muscles defining his shoulders. And then I'm going to do a quick gesture drawing. Remember, kind of a stick arm. Our wrist is the level of the trochanter. The hand kind of curls around like that. And then a gesture for this arm where the wrist is just under his navel right here. This forearm is very foreshortened, so it occupies not too much space in the drawing. Notice if we go from the end of the finger to the wrist, and we double that, like the forearm in this pose is just a little longer than the hand. Okay, most of you are going to want to make this too long and you're going to get confused. because the form is so foreshortened. So at this stage in the drawing, what we're assessing in our work is the gesture. Like, does it feel like he's off center because his weight is to the left of his feet? Does it feel like he's moving forward? And do the proportions feel accurate? There's the skateboard. And you want to resist the temptation to go in and add details until you're really comfortable with the gesture and the proportions. The worst thing to do is to start layering beautiful details onto something that is poorly proportioned or that lacks the desired gesture. So, ready or not, we are going to draw the portrait now. Let me clean up the annotations here, and we're going to try to make this look a little bit like Zac Efron. What was he even in? High School Musical. Okay. I never saw that. So, even though okay, so I'm guessing where the top of his skull is. Let's talk about how we're going to read this, first of all. We know that the bottom of the ear is normally level with the bottom of the nose. Top of the ear is normally level with the top of the eye. When we see the ears raised up like this, see what happens when I lower my head a little? My ears raise up in relation to my eyes. When we see that happen, we know that the head is tipped down slightly. And when the head tips down a little, we see a little more of the top of the skull than we normally would. So the eyes are dropped lower than they would be. So let's start by putting the eyes just a little bit below center on the head. Just a little. And check your work. We're going to measure this, and this unit is smaller than this unit by about maybe 15%. It's not a huge difference. And let's go ahead and indicate the ears up here. And you'll see with those two little marks, we're already giving a sense that the head is tipped down. This is going to be a ridiculously small portrait. I don't want you to get too hung up on getting it perfect, but let's see. So we've got eye level. Eye shape is easy. His eyes are squinting in the sun, so they're just little lines. So we're just gonna go for it. Make sure you leave enough room in between them. And I'm gonna pop a little shadow around this eye and shadow across the forehead. And the next proportion I'm gonna draw his eyebrows above the eye socket. The next proportion we might want to assess is, remember, we look for the nose to be centered between the eyebrows and the bottom of the chin. And that looks to be the case. So we're going to find that location and pop a little shadow under the nose. And we want the mouth, we look for the mouth to be 1/3 of the way down between the bottom of the nose and the bottom of the chin, which it is. So we're going to pop a little dark right there. And another little dark under the bottom lip. I'm going to indicate that his olives are about same width as the space between his eyes. And a lot of the character of this actor is going to come through in the face shape. He's got a very strong angular jawline. Because his head is tipped down, the jaw is turning about the same as level of the mouth. If his head was facing us directly, we'd be looking for that turn to be a little lower, but we're going to turn the jaw level with the corners of the mouth. And he's got strong cheekbones. And remember, when I marked this mark here is the top of the skull, not the top of the hair. The hair is going to come above that. And does that look like Zac Efron? Not especially, but it is the best I'm going to do this morning. A lot of his muscularity comes from just how huge his traps are. So we can convey that swelling between the neck and the outside of the collarbone here. And again, to the craftsmanship piece, I want you to notice I'm drawing these dark contour lines over my faintly indicated gesture drawing. Here's the shadow along the side of the neck. Terminating at the pit of the neck, which we indicated earlier. I probably don't need to tell you that the reason we're looking at a beach photograph is we want to see a little more anatomy than we would in clothes. So we can see what his collarbone's doing. It starts at the pit of the neck, it comes up to here. It's sort of like a handlebar shape. Same thing on the other side, but a little slightly more foreshortened. Here's the sternum. Here's the pectoralis, which is also very well developed in Mr. Efron. And this pec is very foreshortened. Drawing the nipple will give us a little clue to that, how it's turning away from us. And this pec is facing us directly. So I really want you to grasp how the symmetry of the face, which is turned towards us, goes to radical asymmetry when we get down to the rib cage. And that's what conveys that twist of the pose. Here's that line down the center of the abdomen to the navel, which is right above the wrist. And we're going to shadow map this torso, the shadow edge along the pectoralis. And to give our drawings a sense of a little bit of volume, we're going to go ahead and do a first shading. Like that. With this edge of the torso comes basically straight down from underneath that pectoralis to just about the level of the navel. And we're going to place this nipple right along this shadow edge. And this fullness here, this is not the edge of the rib cage. The rib cage is going to end right about here. This fullness is the latissimus muscle, which is also very well, which he has taken some trouble to develop. So okay. So now we're going to find the contour of this arm. We got the gesture, we got the general sense of the mass. Now we're really looking at the exact contours. Deltoid slightly overlapping the tricep. With the bicep out in front. And this little shadow detail here shows the way the muscles sort of interlock between the deltoid. Deltoid sort of, see how it's diving down in between the tricep and bicep, this characteristic interlocking pattern. Like that. And then the forearm is that characteristically kind of chicken leg shape, because it's all the musculature is up near the joint And by the time we get down near the wrist, it is all tendon. So you'll notice that the upper arm, sort of the curves peak near the middle. The lower arm, the curves are peaking near, much closer to the elbow. Okay, so we know that where the wrist is. We know that his hand should be about 3/4 of a head big. Let's take a measurement here, because a lot of you are in the habit of making hands too small still. So if I take this measurement and I compare it to okay. Because the hand is curved, it's a little smaller. The size of the hand is about the same size as the chin to the eyebrows. You see that? So I'm going to measure that chin to eyebrows, and that should be about the same length as wrist to fingertips. Just most of you are going to have to draw the hand a little bigger than you think it needs to be, because you're just still drawing your hands too small. So I'm simplifying this gesture of this hand into a few lines. Just try to copy the lines I made. Remember, the body of the hand here is about the same length as the fingers. And the thumb has its own mass and its own gesture. And we're going to do the other hand. It'll be easier to get the other hand the right size since we have this one to refer to. So here's the body of this hand. There's a nice little gesture of the pointer finger. But we're not going to get hung up on the details here. Again, just try to copy the lines I'm making almost as if you were copying like a Chinese character. Learning how to simplify is really important. And the simplifications I'm using, I've learned from copying a lot of master drawings. So just keep it simple like that. So you'll notice his pants are falling down a little. I need to bring this plane change down a little lower. And this mass here is the external oblique muscle. No, it isn't. External oblique ends here. This is the iliac crest. So this is the external oblique. And here we're already coming down into the gluteal muscles. And you see this transition here. This is where that's the iliac crest of the pelvis. So his pants are really riding low here. Okay, let's do something with this other arm. And if you're falling behind, just jump around with me. You can go back later, but don't stay on an area longer than I am. So here's his bicep. This is a great example of something we've talked about where the indentation on one side here is sort of answered on the other side by a swelling. So this is the transition from the deltoid to the tricep, that little indent, and it's answered by the swelling of the bicep on the other side. And we've got some light falling onto the forearm here, but the whole rest of this arm is in shadow, so I'm going to hit that with first shading. Remember, you're shading the other way if you're right-handed. And that's about it for our anatomy, because now we're going to be drawing baggy pants. So let's zoom back out. I'm going to draw the pant leg in front first. It ends just above the knee. And these little compression folds would be nice to convey a little bit of the gesture. The denim is pulled a little tighter on the front of the thigh. And I'm going to simplify the rest of this into just one big arc that drops down a little bit past the pant leg on that side. And then I'm going to shadow map and shade this. We're going to keep it really simple. So we can see a little bit of the structure of the kneecap and the knee joint. And the calf muscle. And remember, on the lower leg, here's the bone, all the muscle is pulling out to the back of the lower leg, and along the front of the shin, you can, as you can feel on your own body, there's like no muscle along the front. So this is really straight until we get down almost to the foot, and then there's a little bit of muscle that kicks out towards the front of the foot. A few of you were drawing your shoes really small, so make sure that this foot's a little bit foreshortened, but not too much. This foot occupies about as much space in the drawing as the head does, so think of it that way. And quick shadow map of the shadow on the lower leg. And notice that this knee drops down below the other one. And this foot comes out behind that one. And all we see of it is the little back of the heel. There's the tail of the skateboard coming up behind the heel. And we're going to zoom out and sort of check our work. When I shrink my drawing on the screen, that's the same effect you get if you take a step or two back from your work, which I encourage you to do on a regular basis. So for a few final steps on this drawing, I like to look for my darkest darks. Remember, any place you can see an edge, you can see the edge because there are different values on either side of the edge. So, like we can see this edge of the bicep against the torso because it's darker on the side of the torso and it's a little lighter on the bicep side. So I'm going to darken that. And then I'm going to do that little hack of darkening some of my form shadows where they're closest to the light, like this. And you see what happens. I just produced a little bit of reflected light inside the bicep. I can do the same thing along the edge contour of the neck, darken where it's closer to the light. Along the chin shadow. Maybe I could do a better job of showing that this cast shadow, this is a cast shadow of the head falling across the pec, is fairly sharp edge because it's a cast shadow compared to this shadow here is a very soft edge because it's a form shadow on a very rounded, curved form. I'm going to do a little bit of contour shading on the bicep here. Little shadow accent under the pec. A little contour, curved contour shading across this forearm. And at this point, I'm kind of squinting and I'm using the pattern detection part of my brain, and I'm just asking myself how I can make the overall pattern of light and dark in my drawing look more like the overall pattern of light and dark in the photograph. Obviously, we could spend all day trying to capture all these little nuances, but we're not going to do that. A little darker in the eye socket. And I forgot to put his shirt in the drawing. He kind of tucked his shirt into his back pocket, it looks like. And it's a plaid shirt, so I could even very quickly show you a little bit of the, see, I'm using these broken hatching lines in two different directions to give a sense of the pattern and the way the fabric is kind of moving. And I'm showing you this mainly so you can understand that you can give a sense of something like this without spending hours trying to slavishly drawing every detail. Okay, that's going to do it for my video. Thank you for watching.